Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this weekend for our online message at Deep Rivers Church. As always, if you're out of town, hope that you're having a nice time and you're back safe and sound real soon. If you are at home because you're not feeling well, and again, as always, hope you bounce back real quick. It's best, obviously, if we can all be together. All right, I have in my hand this week's worship guide. It is full of information. There is the worship guide handout for the message that you get when you're here. And this week is a little bit different because there's a postcard. Now, this postcard might have been mailed to you. It is a postcard about our summer school supply and sport drink collection. So if you would like, please consider donating some Gatorades or sport drinks to the church. We blessed the Lower Dolphin football team after practices this fall. We're also collecting school supplies for the elementary school that's just around the corner from here. The Facebook page will have the list of supplies as soon as we know about it. You can make a donation to the cash to the church for both of those. Also, I just want to highlight we have a graphic here about a baptism and picnic. Do you want to get baptized? Have you ever been baptized? What is it about? Do you want to get rebaptized? Maybe you were an infant when you got baptized, or maybe a lot has happened in your life and you're interested in having a conversation about rebaptized. We'd love to have that conversation with you. Sunday, August 23rd, 1 p.m., Swatara Creek, right next to Main Street in Hummelstown, if you will, Hornerstown Road and Hanover, right there. Somebody here at the church owns some property there, so it's always a great time. So connect with the church if you're interested in getting baptized. All right, we are working through a sermon series, big lessons from the little books of the Bible. And this week it's about Malachi. Let me ask you a question. There is a ad on the radio all the time for something called Rocket Money. And what Rocket Money does is you sign up for this app, and it tells you all the different subscriptions that you are paying for that you might have forgot about. They're still getting charged to your credit card, but for whatever reason, you're unaware. And the people in these ads are shocked when they find out how much they're paying for subscriptions, things that they don't even know about. So they're getting charged, but they're not using whatever the service is. And in some ways, it's the whole premise of the commercial in some ways is if stop paying this because you're kind of cheating yourself. You're cheating yourself if you're paying for something and not using it. Well, Malachi kind of talks about how we can kind of cheat ourselves. It feels awful when we get cheated, but it's a special kind of pain, if you will, when we end up cheating ourselves. So this is what Malachi, among other things, is kind of talking about. Malachi is the last book in the Old Testament, written about 430 BC after the Hebrew people returned from Babylonian exile. When he stops speaking, Malachi, at the end of this book, it's the beginning of the 400 years of silence that is broken in the New Testament by John the Baptist. So Malachi is the last prophet who speaks and writes and ministers until John the Baptist 400 years later. Basically, the theme that he speaks of is the theme that a lot of the prophets spoke of, unfortunately. People had grown spiritually lax. Now, LAX, strange word. What does lax mean? It means they become spiritually careless, laid back, lenient, soft, tolerant, permissive, or I like this one, slipshod. They're not taking their faith seriously. Malachi and God addresses their complacency. Complacency is sort of a nice way for laziness. They got spiritually lazy. That's easy, unfortunately, even for us to do. So, what is it about? What is Malachi about? Again, we're going to kind of do a quick survey. Number one, God's love for Israel, his people. Malachi opens with God affirming his love. This is the message that the Lord gave to Israel through the prophet Malachi. I have always loved you, But you answer, really? How have you loved us? And the Lord replies, this is how I showed my love for you. I loved your ancestor Jacob, but rejected his brother Esau. Israel doubted God's love. And let's be honest, there are times when we can also doubt God's love. So God points out that he chose Jacob's line over Esau's as evidence of his covenant faithfulness. Now, here is the mystery of the word chosen. God chose Israel over Esau. God has chosen us. Now, this gets us into a pretty complex conversation of free will versus predestination. I like to think of it, we're chosen, but we still have some responsibility in it. Now, you can spend your life trying to figure this out, or you could just enjoy the fact that for some reason, God has illuminated your mind and your heart to his truth, okay? So God's love for Israel, God's love for his people. Now, you and I might not be a part of Israel, but we are now a part of his people. God has chosen us. The second thing he talks about is their flawed or their heartless worship. God rebukes them for treating worship of him with contempt or like disrespect or a lack of fear. Maybe they had awe, but maybe not a healthy fear. Chapter 1, verse 10. I love this. God said, "Oh, that one of you would shut the temple doors so that you would not light useless fires on my altar. I am not pleased with you. I will accept no offering from your hands." Now, this gets a little bit tricky for us. How do New Testament believers with a new identity, forgiven on this side of the cross, a new identity, we're new creations, how do we read and apply a verse like this, talking about worship in Old Testament, fires on the altar? I think of it, we need to think of it this way, is that it's encouragement for all of us to ponder our hearts. What is our motivation to worship? What is your motivation when you come to church or watch this? Why are you here? The people are going to be here. Why are we here? What's our heart motivation for it? Are we doing it with our heart, or are we just kind of going through the motions? Malachi, or God, contrasts this kind of worship with a future vision of pure worship among the nations. And then verse 11, right after verse 10, obviously, verse 11, "My name will be great among the nations. From where the sun rises to where it sets, in every place incense and pure offerings will be brought to me, because my name will be great among the nations." So when you hear the word nations, you got to think world, and not just the Hebrew people, not just the Jewish people. Many are now chosen. Now, we're still one family. God chose the family of Abraham to be his people. Now, in Christ, we are chosen to be his people. The next thing that Malachi addresses is their unfaithfulness and even a sense of betrayal. He says in chapter 2, verse 11, "A detestable thing has been committed in Israel and in Jerusalem. Judah has desecrated the sanctuary. Judah has desecrated the sanctuary the Lord loves by marrying women who worship a foreign god." They had broken covenant with God. Now, here's an interesting question. You could say, in some respects, they had broken covenant with God and with each other. There are social and moral obligations that bound them together, bind us together. So it's interesting, pretty challenging thought. When they broke a covenant with God, they were also breaking it with each other, because those covenants help bind them together as well. How do they do this? They had foreign wives who worshiped idols and other gods. Basically, they assimilated and they adapted. These wives came over with their gods, and the people started worshiping them. They, as it says here, they have desecrated, or you could say profaned, if you want to use that word, the sanctuary. All right, Malachi goes on for this, the coming of two messengers. Two, it seems like there's only one at the first reading. Here, let me give a moment to explain. I will send my messenger who will prepare the way before me. Then suddenly the Lord you are seeking will come to his temple. The messenger of the covenant whom you desire will come. But who can endure the day of his coming? Who can stand when he appears? For he will be like a refiner's fire or a launderer's soap. He will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. Then the Lord will have men who bring offerings in righteousness. Chapter 3, verses 1 through 4. The two messengers, if you will. Messenger number one. This is quoted later in the New Testament and applied to John the Baptist preparing the way for Jesus. So Malachi is predicting, he's prophesying, a forerunner will come. We see this in Matthew 11 and Mark 1. That is John the Baptist. Who's messenger number two? One of the messengers of the covenant is going to be one who refines and cleans us with the launderer's soap. He refines, he cleans us, and that's Jesus. So here we have a prophecy of two people. The coming forerunner, John the Baptist, but also a prophecy about Jesus coming as well as a messenger, deliverer might be a more accurate way to say it, of the new covenant. All right, then, talk about cheating yourself. Malachi talks about how we try to actually rob God. Robbing God or cheating yourself. I can put those two phrases together. This may be one of the most quoted passages in the book. God accuses the people of withholding what belongs to him. He starts off, I, the Lord, do not change. Now, right there, we could stop and have a message right there. The fact that one of God's characteristics is his immutability. He cannot change. He does not change. He cannot change. A very scary thought, I've said this before, a very scary thought is a God who can change. Now, the world would like God to change, and some people have changed their view of God to bend to what they want. But God says, I, the Lord, do not change. Again, we could camp out on that a long time. He goes on to this. Because I do not change, you are not destroyed. Ever since the time of your ancestors, you have turned away from my decrees and have not kept them. Return to me, and I will return to you. But you ask, how are we to return? Will a mere mortal rob God? Yet you rob me, says God. But you ask, how are we robbing you? And God replies, in tithes and offerings. The people are not giving to God. But then, very next verse, and probably the most famous invitation is this exercise to trust God. You may have heard this. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be enough room to store it. So here we get tricky question number 2. How do New Testament believers read and apply this? This is Old Testament kind of conversation. A tithe is a tenth. It was part of the requirements. So how do we deal with this today? For some people, they would kind of, I would say, twist it a little bit, and they say, tithe and reap the blessings. Give to God, and he will bless you. But we have to look at the whole picture. Jesus says, in this life you will have trouble. So even if you do give generously to God, there may be blessing. I think there will be blessing, but that doesn't mean you're not going to have trouble, all right? You have to look at the full picture. In fact, the epistles say over and over again, basically, trials refine us and grow us in our character. Romans 5, 3 through 4, James 1, 2 through 3, 1 Peter 1, 6 through 7. I'll even throw in Proverbs 17. Hard things are going to happen. So here, Malachi is telling us, if we tithe, if we give to God, there will be blessings. But in the full picture, we have to recognize there's still going to be hard things. How do these two things work together? This is the way I think we need to look at it for us, for you. Exercise trust in God. Believe what he says in spite of how you feel. Now, whether it's tithing, giving to the church, or whatever, that's just an expression. What Malachi is saying is you need to trust God. Give to God. See what happens, okay? Don't cheat yourself out of blessings by not giving to me. What is the fruit of our trust? Is it a bigger bank account? I can't say yes or no. Maybe. For sure the fruit of our trust will be peace and rest. And ultimately, isn't that what we all desire? We all want peace and rest. So the last thing that Malachi has to say, he says a little bit more about the coming of this first messenger, Elijah. It ends with a promise that connects the Old Testament and the New Testament. So he says this, chapter 4, verses 5 through 6, very end of the book, very end of the Old Testament. I will send the prophet Elijah to you before the great and dreadful day of the Lord. He will turn the hearts of the parents to their children and their hearts of the children to their parents. Again, these are the last words of the Old Testament, and again, they're connected to John the Baptist. Let's go to Luke 1, verse 17. And he will go on before the Lord in the spirit and power of Elijah, about John the Baptist, and turn the hearts of the parents and their children and the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. This creates a bridge into the Gospels and the life of Jesus as the Messiah that we know. John the Baptist was the forerunner. But, this is where it gets interesting, it's also a bridge to still future events. So this passage, chapter 4, is a bridge to John the Baptist, the life of Christ, but it's also a bridge for still future things that haven't happened yet. This will be fulfilled, like I said, when John the Baptist, in a figurative sense, you see it Mark 11, Matthew 11, Mark 9, and Luke 1. Yet, but because this Elijah, the one that he is speaking of, because this Elijah comes before the coming of the great and dreadful day, there's some future eschatology talk, we also know that the Elijah prophecy is only completely filled before the second coming of Jesus. So it's a now fulfilled, but also a not yet. Okay? Matthew 17:11, Revelation 3 speak of this future fulfillment when God will either send Elijah back to the earth on the special errand, the second coming of Christ, or send someone uniquely empowered in the spirit and office of Elijah. So we see promises here, not just for Jesus the Messiah, but promises actually for the second coming, the end times conversation as well. So Malachi's got a lot to say. I thought I was done with the message, and then I came across this verse, and I just wanted to kind of use it as a capstone, I guess, for our time this weekend. Chapter 4, verses 2 through 3. But for you who revere my name, when we revere God's name, the Sun of Righteousness will rise with healing in its rays, and you will go out and frolic like well-fed calves. Then you will trample on the wicked. They will be ashes under the soles of your feet on the day when I act, says the Lord Almighty. I just wanted to throw that, I don't want to say throw that in there, that didn't seem right. But I thought it'd be a great way to kind of end what Malachi has to say, this blessing, this promise of what happens when we revere God's name. Again, it goes back to the heart. Questions that we're going to ponder, that I would like you to ponder, is how have you assimilated or adapted to the culture around you? The people in Malachi had married foreign wives. They brought their foreign gods, and evidently the people had worshipped them. Okay? And this is a good question for all of us. We might have some blind spots. How have we assimilated? How we have adapted to the culture around us? Second one is your heart fully engaged in your worship with God? If not, why not? Are you going through the motions, or are you really worshiping with your heart? And the last one is this exercise of trust. What practical things or thing can you do to exercise more trust in God? That's what Malachi is saying. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Trust me in this. Test me, he says. Test me in this. Like I say, trust me would also be something that would fit in there. And see that if I'm not, throw open the floodgates of heaven, and God will bless. So what practical things can you do to exercise more trust? Maybe it is giving money, or maybe it's something else, all right? But ask God to show you how you might be able to, what practical things you can do to trust him more. All right, thanks so much. Take care. God bless. Bye.